Welcome back. It's been a couple of weeks and that's going to be the program now, so it'll be every fortnight with Road to Top 60, and that'll work with the biography we're doing as well, so it'll be still a Thursday at 3:30, but Road to Top 60 will every second week, and that'll be right through until we get the car finished sometime later in the year. So I'm working through a whole process now to timeline that, to bring everyone together. So we've got, you know, trimmers, we've got to do fuel lines, we've got to do brake lines, all those bits and pieces. So most of it's been started, but we've still got to go through the process to bring that together. So I'm working on a plan to make sure that this car gets finished. And part of that planning is about all the small items. So I've just grabbed a few things that I've got on the go here at the moment. So for instance, the door locks. So these are all original locks, and I prefer where I can to use the Ford part rather than a repo. Repo is good if you don't have an alternative, but if you can find good original locks. So I've just sanded those up. So they're stainless steel. So I've been able to clean those up and polish them. And they're sitting now to go off to the locksmith, because some time ago I picked up these. Have got the nice Ford logo on some blank keys. So I'll take them in, get those cut. So that'll be the doors and the boot. And of course, being the FG trim, we've got the FG lock inside, so it'll have 3 keys for the car. One of the other things that I'm working on as well is, when the car came to me, there was a box full of bits and pieces the owner had been collecting, and there was all different badges. So being a 429, this one here I would say is from, you know, the late 60s, and this one here is from a Torino. So looking at the bag it was in, so it's a 1970 Torino, and you know, it's made by Dearborn Classics, and I like that, and obviously the owner liked it because he'd already bought some. So what we've been able to do is to take that badge, and you can see behind me here where I've got it sitting on there, and I've got 2 issues here. One is the fact that I need to have a side indicator light because we've taken the one out from up the front. So where the XC would normally have an indicator here, the fact that we've got rid of this line, got rid of that, we still now for rego need to have a side indicator. So what we've been able to do is to take that particular one and then cut this backing edge off it through here so that it's the same thickness all around, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then we've taken a 1mm blade on the grinder and ran a line to the slot. And then I've got this one hooked up to a battery, so we'll do this a bit neater than this when we're finished, and what we've ended up with is the side indicator. So when we did that, we cut top and bottom, and I've decided now I'm just going to do it in the top, and then that's got 5 LEDs in the back of it, and that will be, I believe, will be sufficient to satisfy the engineer for our rego purposes. And then what I've got on the back there that's all falling apart on me, so we've taken that badge and cut it down from that, and this is the prototype, and we've got those 2 slots, and then I had some LEDs here, so I'm going to get some more new ones that are a bit thinner, and they'll sit in behind here, and the light then comes through the slot. So fortunately we had a few of these, so I'm going to just put the slot in the top, and then we'll put the LEDs in from the back, and then that'll have a hole in the guard that'll go back through. Then I'll fill that up with I've got a two-part product here that I can put in there that's clear, and it's made for joining electrics that are going to go underwater. So we'll be able to use that to fill the back of it up, and then my plan will be to maintain the blocks in the back here and put a thread in those so that we can bolt it on, and I'll have the wire coming out the back. So that's one little project that I've had on the go, and I've sent that off to Peter to confirm he's happy with that, and I haven't heard back from him yet, but I'm sure that will be okay. So we're going to run with that. And then the other thing I've had the trimmer working on is where we're going to these are the plastics that go around the seats, and I'd like to keep those as they are rather than trying to cover them, because I just think to cover something like this, it's just not going to look very nice. So where we've been modifying them and putting all of this filler and stuff in, the thought was to do that with Alcantara. And I mean, I just felt that would look a little bit like it was modified, and I'm trying to build this car so it's not modified. So I've had Simon go off and find some leather, and fortunately he's found something that's very close to the grain and the colour of what those panels are. And what I'm going to do now is, or he'll do, is he'll trim these plastics with that leather, and we'll end up where I think they'll look like plastics and have the leather on them. So rather than use the suede in the Alcantara, we'll actually use a leather, and I think that will look heaps better. So that's been another one of those jobs that's been ongoing. And then our carpet's black, so we'll have, you know, this around the seat, this panel here covered in that, all against the black, and I think that'll look really good. So really happy the way all those bits and pieces are coming along. And then in the last episode you've seen Darren have been playing with these. Now that's almost a finished job as well now. So once Simon goes to fit those, he'll play a bit with some of the, you know, the tolerances, but pretty much that's a done deal now. So that's fiberglass and plastic, and we've gone all the way around to make sure it stays together, and it'll have the original mounting holes as it was from Ford. So just a few more of those small things that we've got to make happen. Thought I'd grab the opportunity to tell you a bit about this front spoiler. You've probably seen it kicking around in the background in a lot of the shows for almost months, and it's sitting here in filler. So it's all fiberglass. We modified it, changed the shape, and the ideal scenario is, and I've spoken to Peter about it, is that we'll get a mould made off of this so that we can actually create some new ones, because there's always a chance you're going to run into something and break it. So it's got a lot of filler in it, but I'm trying to get the shape really nice. And part of that process, and one of the things I like to do, and the reason it was still sitting, is I wanted to come back and film it and show you what I would do to make sure everything's symmetrical. I've done measurements from the centre and out, and then to get these openings correct, because even from the original spoiler that we bought, they weren't the same. So if we bring the camera in and have a look, you'll see from the top here where I've actually used the ruler to come through and put my lines in, and then I've got a second line there, and that second line is to create the radius so that I get that same 4 or 5 mil, whatever I was using there, radius. And then I've used another little tool I've got to put the circle on, and that could be anything. I mean, you could pick something up that's the size you want to use, like that, and mark your radius. And by using that to mark all 4 radiuses, you can then get your filler correct. So you can see here where I've put a bit of extra in there and I haven't rubbed it out yet. So the idea is to have it all nice and square and symmetrical, and then I'll get a coat of primer on it so that it can go over, and then I'll use that as the buck to make the mould, and then they can then use that mould to make the actual spoiler we're going to use, and have the ability to have a spare one, or to be able to make as many as you need down the track. Would be nice if we could use that to make this particular spoiler to sell to other people, but the problem is we've changed the bumpers, we've changed the wheel arch, so it's probably not going to suit anything else. But at least if Peter breaks one, he'll have the opportunity to actually make a new one the same as the original. I mentioned earlier about all these small jobs, so the steering wheel is another thing that has been mentioned on the show in people commenting about what we're going to do with it because it looked terrible. And the FG with that big airbag centre is always a problem. So we're going to recover the wheel, but before we do that, because we're not running an airbag, I can do something with the centre. So I'll put a still shot up of what it looked like before we started, because I didn't do any footage before I started with it. And I've pulled it all apart, and I'll just show you the process for that. So the airbag fits in the middle here and bolts to the centre of the wheel, and we've pulled that out because we're not running the airbag, and then cut this main frame down to enable us to get this cover here to actually fit further down onto the wheel, because from standard this sit right up like this. So what we've done now is we've cut this down to fit between the switches to enable us to get it nice and flat down like that. So I've just started to unstitch this, and I'll show you what I'm doing with that as well. But my idea here is to have this top rail, looks like it goes straight through, and when they retrim the wheel, we'll be able to make this look, I guess, more like a performance wheel rather than an airbag wheel. And then I'm looking to replace these with the silver switches, which came out on the GTs. So we've trimmed this down, made a lot of changes over a period of time. So from standard, it's got these clips that clip down in, so we've been cutting away, as you can see there, and grinding everything down to get it down to fit flat. But what I'm looking to do is to maintain this frame and this piece that bolts on the steering wheel, because that's the spring-loaded bit that works the horn. So I wanted to keep that so that the horn, when you push on here, will still work as per original. So what I'm doing now, that will all fit down into there, a bit tighter than that. I'm going to unpick the cover, and then I'm going to get some foam. I'm going to add the foam on and change the shape of the steering wheel to get that nicer performance style steering wheel. So I'll just go through and do some of that, and we'll record it, and then I'll probably do a bit of a voiceover on it. So here we go. We're going to cut up a nice XR6 steering wheel. So one of the issues I had here is I really couldn't afford to damage what's under the leather. So I'd run the blade around there and just cut the stitching. And the other thing I'm trying to do here is to keep that outer cover in case the guy that's going to recover it wants to utilise that to use it for a pattern. So I'm just going to cut through one edge. So I found with the heat gun, if you run that around, don't need it real hot, but hot enough to try and release that glue. And it's pretty cold here at the moment, so I needed to keep the heat up to it. So it's interesting to go through this process. This is something I've never done before, and it's always good to be doing something new. So I've got that off now, and I've cleaned all of the glue off with some what did I end up using? I tried a bit of glue strip, didn't really work that well, so I ended up with some gun wash, and that didn't affect the plastics at all, so I used that to get all the glue off. And now I'm just using a quality contact adhesive, and I've run out of small brushes, so I'm going to fight with this big brush through this process. So what I'm gluing up now is I've made up a bit of a pattern, and that's a very high density foam that I got off Simon from Elite Trim, and I'm gluing that with a contact adhesive on to build up that right hand side so that it matches up with the centre. So as we all know, you need to make sure that that goes off before you try and put it on. So ideally it's pretty much tacky that you can touch it with your finger and it won't stick, and you only get one go at it, so you've got to try and organise it. And you'll see here that I have a bit of trouble just working out which way around I had it. This way? No. That way? No. No. Oh. There it is. Maybe. Righto, so nice and careful now and push it around. And what I'm trying to do, as you can see, that's already starting to show, is I need to raise it up where it meets to that centre pad. So now that I've got that on, I'm going to give it a sand. So like I said, I haven't done this before, so I've just experimented a bit with this foam, and I've ended up working with 120 as the coarse paper to sort of rough my shape in, and then use a bit of 180. And I wasn't making a lot of progress with the by hand, so I ended up grabbing the little Mercer sander you'll see in a minute. So I was surprised how it actually holds really good on the outside edges where it's glued on. I was a bit worried that it might have lifted, but it came out really good. So I've just got 180 pad on that little sander, and that's like spinning. It's not an orbital, it's the actual spinning version of it, and that worked really well. So it's always interesting doing these jobs. The first side's always easy because you make it up as you go. The other side's a bit harder because you then got to remember what you did and try and get it to be the same. So you can see there I'm just showing where that gap is. I need to make a fairly wide gap there because I need that to be able to rock for the horn button to work. So that whole centre section is on the spring-loaded setup. So as I get that sanded down, I ended up putting some 3mm on the centre pad as well so that I could get all the tapers right because the shape just wasn't working for me. So from that new line that runs across from one side to the other, I've actually put 3mm on there in a minute. So I ended up sanding this area almost all the way down because I wanted to make sure there's plenty of room for the thumb, because on my FPV that area is just almost a little bit tight, so you've got to take into consideration you've got the leather to go in there as well. So I pretty much take all that back out and some just to make sure the thumb area's got plenty of room. So across the bottom, because we've shortened up that centre pad, I've made a piece of custom wood to go in there, and I've glued that in and screwed it as well from the back. So it's a non-structural area, it's not actually part of the steering wheel. And I've used that same foam, a little bit, it's I think a 6mm thick, and I've sanded each side down with a square edge so that I could butt that up and get it to glue in there properly. Howard's always impatient, so we'll get the bit of heat gun on there. So this whole process was really about maintaining the FG wheel so I can have the switches for the cruise control and the stereo control and the horn buttons and all those things, but I wanted to get rid of the bulkiness and make it look a little bit more performance style wheel. So I've got that shaped up. Now I've glued some extra material onto the outside edges there. So I've just added those. I've had a look at the wheel on my Super Pursuit, which is the same as the BFGT. And I've just added it a bit extra where I think I can make it look a little bit more sports. And you'll see there now that I've actually sanded that down, and you can compare the left to the right where it's just a bit more bulky, feels a bit nicer in the hand, and has got more of a look like the GTs. And I might actually go out the front shed and just show you the comparison to the GT and the FPV. Thought I'd take the opportunity just to show you where we started and how we ended up where we are now. So the wheel in this car is the standard FG wheel. So that's what we started with the XR6 wheel, except this one's got the silver switches where the one I've got's got the black. So I'm going to actually get a set of silver switches because I like that look. So that's where we started from, and that's where we've ended up. So my plan was to get a wheel that didn't have that big airbag. Because we're not running the airbag, I can afford to flatten that all down. But what I've been able to do is to maintain the actual switches for the horn, because I'm trying to keep all of those electrics as per original. And then I've added some extra onto here to give it a bit more of a sporty look, and then put the bottom through here that comes from there, because that pad now we've moved it right back in. So we've actually, this here is this pad, and we've been able to reshape it and fill it with some plastics, and then I've trimmed the edge off to take it back in so we could go all the way back. So I'm really happy with the way that's come out. So as you can see, I've taken these areas here and taken the styling from off of that BF. So that's a off my Super Pursuit ute. So I've sort of taken a bit of the styling from the BF and taken it over into the FG wheel, but realistically it's its own wheel now. So just trying to finish off where we're up to. So that's the wheel back on the car now. Really happy with the way it's come up. Just to sort of round it out, what I've used to do this is some high density foam, which is sandable, that I got from Simon, the trimmer. So I had a couple of different thicknesses of that. So that's what I've used here and also on here. And then to be able to cut and reshape the plastics, I've used some of the SEM plastic repair, and I've used that to strengthen it, but also to enable me to fill holes and things up. So I've used that on the other plastics. And then you just need to make sure you get yourself a quality contact adhesive. No particular choice there, but to make sure that it's going to stay on, you want a quality one. So it'll now go off to Simon's got a trimmer that'll actually cover that, and we'll utilise something similar to what was on the original one, which was perforated and plain leather. So I'm thinking all black, and in the centre here, instead of the Ford logo, we're going to run the AD from the Astill design logo in the middle here somewhere. So that's pretty much a done deal. So we'll get that organised, and then I'll get a set of silver switches to go on it as well, and that'll finish it off. Well, I'm really happy to be able to bring you some good news about merch. So people are asking about merch all the time. So you'll see on the site, we've already got the stuff from the biography, and we get those done as we go. But these I've had done, super nice, new styles. So obviously engine out of BOSSXC, but a generic Powered by Ford shirt with the new AD on the front for Astill design, obviously. So there's that one, there's this one, same as in the hoodie. And then we've done a cap. I haven't had caps for a very long time. So that's got the AD on the front and then the Astill design on the side. So they're a snapback, good quality cap, really nice to wear. So the shirts, hoodies, and you can get those direct through us now at astilldesign.com, and the link will be in the comments.